God bless everybody. Today it is July 27th of 2023, and we are still in the 9th of Av. Some interesting information just came across my desk. I wanted to share it with you. This was a problem that we had back in January and I believe in May as we walked through these articles. This was this kickoff of the original problem on the Temple Mount, when the national security officer or leader of the Israeli people went up to the Temple Mount on January 3rd and really started to occupy the Al-Aqsa Mosque. Okay, this is a real problem, and I'll show you why. This is such an important story, and probably no one is paying much attention to it because they're watching everything else. The bonds went crazy today. Fed raised another 2.5, and so we're going to watch dispersion in the bonds, and we're going to watch all your interest rates rise on everything, and the foreigners are going to start massive defaults due to that also. So there's a lot going on today. Let's walk through this. Okay, so this national security far-right minister has, for the third time in 1 year, penetrated the Al-Aqsa Mosque, and I'm probably saying it wrong. This is the gentleman's name. He did this in January, on January 3rd. There's an indication on my paradigm that I thought this would start a chain of events that would lead us, where we are today, and potentially an attack on Israel by Hamas and Hezbollah, and this is affecting the Palestinians. Now, remember, we just had a report about Turkey working with Palestine. He went down there. He's trying to figure out how to eliminate the Iranian problem because they're trying to protect the what? The Temple Mount, okay? I just did that report yesterday. Look, this is a real problem because back in 1967, and I believe there's a report, and I'll show you this as we go through, they indicated that the Jewish people had no ability or no right, based on this rabbi and things, to occupy or walk around this portion of the temple because it's part of the Al-Aqsa Mosque, and this is part of the Muslim portion of the footprint, and so they felt that the Jewish people should not be in this area, and so it's basically been prohibited for them to come and do this. And so anytime these Jews go up there, it's a problem. Okay, this is a real problem for the Palestinians and the Muslims. Okay, so let's look at why this is a problem and what happened to cause this to be a real point of conflict between the Muslims and the Jews. Okay, so who is allowed on the Al-Aqsa Mosque compound? Okay, and it talks about this Jewish day in May. Okay, there's the second time because the first one was on January 3rd. So on the 6th of May, we had this Jewish group led by the same guy, this national minister. They walked around the Al-Aqsa Mosque escorted by Israeli police. Why? Because they're not supposed to be there. It's forbidden for them to be there. And after that 6-day war, we had a preservation of the holy places law, which was an agreement with Israel that basically said, through a chief rabbi of Israel, that he declared in 1967 that this was a forbidden place for Jews to walk on the Temple Mount, which many believe is the location of the Al-Aqsa Mosque compound due to its pronounced sanctuary. Okay, but they're not obeying this, and so this is causing the Palestinians all kinds of problems because they believe it's their sacred ground, that they shouldn't allow the Jews up there, and every time they do, we have this massive conflict that's going on up here. Okay, so in his infinite wisdom, this gentleman here has now taken, I mean, they're occupying it. They're not just walking around it. He has literally led a group of more than 1,000 ultra-nationalist settlers to the Al-Aqsa compound and is occupying it in East Jerusalem. And this is the third such entrance in the site this year. Well, God loves threes, and we're on the 9th of Av. So he does this on the worst possible day during the potential destruction of 2 temples in the history of the Jews. This man's decided to now what? Go to the Temple Mount and occupy it. You can't, I mean, you got to understand how this is going to turn out badly. So, look, this is totally frustrating the Muslim community, especially the Palestinian leaders. They are not going to tolerate this, okay? They're not going to tolerate this. This is forbidden. This is a holy ground for both. Look, this is holy ground for everybody. This is the seat of God, okay? They believe, as we do, that this is God's area that the third temple will be built on, okay? And so this is a real problem for everyone, and this is going to blow over. I mean, this is going to blow over, and it's going to really hurt the world here soon, because this man does not know how to control himself, and he's been, I guess, ordained by God to start this, because if you go back into January 3rd, you'll realize that this is when this started. But there's something else extremely important here that I've been trying to explain to you, because this date of January 3rd, I believe, was an extremely important date on my paradigm, because this started this whole insurrection, okay? And Daniel, in Daniel 10, shows us that Daniel is extremely distraught, okay? For 3 weeks, he cannot perform his duties. He cannot eat. He cannot do anything, okay? And on the 24th day of the first month, he has this vision. And if you go to Daniel 10, I showed you this. Now, this was the last date that I've added to the paradigm. It's the last date that I've literally found. I found it right before this happened. I put a video out about it. Okay, so in Daniel 10, we're talking about Persia, okay, Iran. Daniel is under his 4th king, okay. You know, he's been there a long time, 70 years. He's in Iran right now, in Shush, and around Shush. And for 3 weeks, he has no bread, no food. He can't fulfill his duties. He's struggling so much. He doesn't understand why. And on the 24th day of the first month, and I talked about these date stamps. Everybody wants to throw away the date stamps because we can't know dates and this and that. You know what? He just tells us we don't know exactly the time or the hour he's going to come back. That doesn't mean that we can't figure out most of the rest of it. So on the 24th day of the first month, wow, January 24th, 3 weeks after this, okay, which was what? January 3rd. Wow, January 3rd. That's when all this started happening. Look, by the 24th, this was really starting to boil over in Jerusalem and on the Temple Mount. And they were having all kinds of issues. And I said, this is going to be a real problem. So then what does he do? He comes and does this again in May, and now on the 9th of Av, on July 27th of 2023, he's now occupied it for the 3rd time, and 3s aren't always a good number in the sense that, you know, it's a godly number, you know, in so many ways, but sometimes it's 3 strikes and you're out too. So maybe this is a bad sign that we're going to see a lot of resistance on the Temple Mount, potentially a war. And it's really interesting because when the 2nd temple was destroyed through Herod and Titus came in, they were literally on the Temple Mount with civil riots happening while they're being sieged and broken into. And this was part of the disruption of the Temple Mount, was that they were already under massive duress and they couldn't figure out how to organize. And so when they came in, the Romans came in, they just basically crushed them. Okay, and then look at this. He tells him, look, and I don't know what the 21-day thing is. I tried to figure this out, if it's a week thing. I don't know why Michael, when he comes down, says that he stood them for 21 days. Maybe that's from the 3rd to the 24th, and then he goes forward, and then look what's happened since the 24th of January to today. So now Israel's getting ready to do something. I've talked about 3 things are going to happen here. Israel's going to attack Iran, or their proxies. Iran proxies are going to attack Israel, or we're going to see an invasion by Turkey possibly. Now this is another problem for Erdogan because he wants to protect that Temple Mount. So now, he's a Muslim. So now the Jews have occupied with 1,000 ultranationalists the temple itself and sacred ground for what they believe is the Muslim portion of the temple, okay, or that area. Do you not think this is not going to turn out well, okay? And how are they going to move these 1,000 people out of there, or what is going to happen there? So he fights against them for 21 days, and then he says, look, I'm going to go against the king of Persia. I'm going to go against him. But then look what happens. As we move through there, Daniel falls on the ground, dumb to his face. He's lifted up, and then he's shown a vision, okay? He's shown what's going to happen. He says, look, I love you, man. Be strong. Look at what's coming. Once Michael's complete, he doesn't finish the job. And now he's going to return to fight against the Persia. And when he goes forth, the prince of Grecia shall come next. Well, who's the prince of Grecia? We talked about this. Alexander came out of the Grecian areas into Asia Minor, took out Lydia, went down into Syria, and then went through that chain of events that I've talked about on a number of videos just recently, the last 3 or 4 videos. He's telling you Israel is going to be in distress. And even Michael is struggling at this point because they're being attacked on all sides. And if the Black Sea falls, they're surrounded. And the king of Greece, Turkey, Erdogan, which was reelected this year on May 14th of 1948 on Israel's birthday of all days. He moved the date. Should have indicated something right there, that this king of Turkey was going to come in and crush them shortly. Now, I've been talking about how that movement is. He's going to go down Lebanon. He's going to go through the West Bank. He's going to go through Israel. He's going to end up in Gaza. He's going to go to Egypt, come back to Tyre, which is in just below Beirut, or Beirut, Lebanon. He flies over to Erbil or Gaugamela, and then he pushes the Kurds. It collapses the Kurds down to Baghdad and Shush, and then you start into Daniel 8. I've been talking about Daniel 8 for over 6 years now, and how the Medes are going to align, or the Kurds are going to align with Persia and Iran, and how this is going to take place. But now you have this gentleman literally making a 3rd incursion on the Temple Mount. So I want to show you how that affects the paradigm. Look, you can come out and look at this stuff all day long. It's endofdaysurvival.com. I don't charge anything. I don't sell anything. It's a free Wix site. It's all you got to do is click on these files down here, which give you all my charts. People call them scrolls. I don't know what they are. They're charts. Some of them are big enough. I guess they'd be scrolls. This one's a literally 8 by 4 foot chart banner. But if you click on this one, this is the paradigm, okay? This is extremely important that you see what's coming up here, okay? So let's click on that and let's bring this up. So this chart, which I talked about for so long now, is based on Psalm 90:10, which is parable of the fig tree, which all things should happen before the fourscore nation of Israel perishes, which if you go to this area here and you'll enlarge it, I'm not going to do that. It tells you that all things should happen before May 14th of 1928, and that we should look back to the fall feast. But right now we're looking at this area here, okay? Because this was extremely important, and I want to blow this up and show you what I'm talking about. This is that January 3rd date, okay, that I've been talking about. Look, I found this in the paradigm. So in Daniel 10:2-4, he tells us that he's been disturbed for 3 weeks. And so we're going to see, so Daniel saw something happen that caused him real angst, similar to this Temple Mount incursion, okay? And he knew this was going to be a real problem as he moved forward, because he was a major leader in, even though he was a Jew, he was elevated to a leader in Iran through Cyrus and everything. So I knew this January 3rd date based on the paradigm of the kings and all these other verses and things that I've come up with to show you where all these dates are, that was going to be important. This was going to start a chain of event. Okay. You know, we are in, this beginning portion of the Shemitah. We just had that massive Shemitah, which should have told us that anytime that happens, this is going to be a potential economic and other type of collapse, because that's the way it normally happens. So we had the Shemitah. We walked into January. This man went to the Temple Mount. 24 days later, or 21 days later, Michael says, look, I've been battling against him for 21 days, and now I'm going to go against him physically, which we've seen Israel basically been doing. They started attacking Damascus, Syria, all these Iranian different strongholds and things to eliminate threats on the Israeli border. And then what happened? We started into this complete destruction to where we're walking into this potential attack on Israel by October, okay? And do you not think that when this national security guy going up to the Temple Mount like this is going to be a real problem? Israel's going to have to figure out how to quell this down. And the Palestinians have got to be going, they're not going to stand for this. This is going to boil over, man. I'm telling you, this is going to boil over to something extreme. And I believe on the 9th of Av, this could not have happened at a worst possible time. We'll see what happens. You know, we've still got a little time. 9th of Av, I consider it goes into like the beginning of the 28th. You know, it's over there. We're looking at our time frames, but it actually is affecting them as much as us, and their time frames are off, 12, 16 hours. I don't know what the time frame zone is. So just be careful of what we're looking at here. Are we literally watching this prophecy play out, and that we're going to see an invasion by Turkey, which would then kick Daniel 8 off? Once Persia falls, then we start that Ezekiel 38-39 process where they just drive back over to Jerusalem because it's surrounded, and they start sieging Jerusalem. And I've talked about that many times. This isn't an overnight sensation, because it literally takes them almost 1.5 to 2 years to break in the door, break in the walls and those residue of the rest of the Jews, because think about it, they're under siege for 1.5 years. It is bleak in Israel, in Jerusalem. They're literally cannibalizing their children down based on verse Bible. And I don't mean to get hung up on that. You need to understand how dire this is going to be. Okay? And they're not seeing it. I've heard this so many times. I even had somebody comment the other day. Oh, we're talking peace, peace, peace. And what does he say? The people that say peace, peace, peace in the end are false prophets, and it will come upon them in destruction. Not only upon the false prophets, but upon Jerusalem and the nation of Israel itself. There is no peace, peace, peace. Because if you go into Joel 1 and 2, you will realize 1/3 of the Jews will, I'm so tired of saying Ezekiel 5:12, but it always happens the same way. 1/3 will die by plagues, famine, economic collapse, and destruction. 1/3 will die by the sword named Gog of Ezekiel 38 and 39. And 1/3 will be removed when the Lord comes down, steps his feet on the Mount of Olives, breaks the Mount of Olives in half, and gives them a path from east to west, so the remainder of the Jews can escape. On the 6th seal, called Revelation 6:16, the wrath of the Lamb. which happens potentially on the 25th of October. God bless everybody. Have a great day.